Obviously, there is a law enforcement component, but there's no question when guys get out of jail, when young people don't have opportunities because of lack of education, and in fact, don't have the types of programs that will put them in a position to, even if the job was here, to get a job, that's what's going to happen. Right. However, is there any conversation about just dealing with the crime?
Well, there's always a conversation about dealing with the crime. The question is whether the conversation is worth having.
Yes.
So, I mean, look, let's take a step back, right? You have New Haven circa 2011, where you're at 34 people being shot, and people are afraid, oh my God, I hope New Year's comes quick because we don't want another one, because we don't want to break the record, right? That's all wonderful. But we know that people who come out of prison and come back to the city need a lot of resources. And thank God the city finally came around. But people have been saying for years that we had a reentry problem. And hearing from the administration of the city, with all due respect, that we didn't have it until about 2007. Right? And so for many years, we weren't doing anything about reentry because it wasn't a problem. And then when we finally decided to do something about reentry, the conversation became about, we need to do something about reentry. But the problem really is, while we're working on that, the problem really is that the state is sending people back here. Well, the state wouldn't be sending back people if you weren't sending them there.
Exactly.
Right? And so again, fundamentally, the first thing we have to do is have honest conversations. And people on all sides of the equation have to accept what their responsibility has been before you can move forward.
And part of this reentry program that the city has, there's a component of it that deals with not just making sure that we know where our ex-offenders are. So that relationship between the city and parole and probation, and there's a cooperative effort to sort of make sure that our people are being monitored.
Sure.
But then there's also the other part, like getting folks into an educational component, getting them jobs. The city itself has not come out with a jobs plan. Pretty much we're still waiting for our mall.
So here's where my frustration takes me. So I can understand that the city might not be able to actually do that. What I don't understand is when we're having the conversation in the halls of the State House, where the voice of the city is. When we want to do things like take some natural lands and close them down in small towns in this state, you have first selectmen, you have people who are elected to whatever their comparable board is, you have those people there en masse. But when we're talking about the violence in the urban centers, when we're talking about employment in urban centers, you do not have that presence. And that presence, whether people realize this or not, makes a big difference, because I am the usual suspect. I am going to yell and scream about unemployment. I am going to yell and scream about violence. But when you see the mayors, when you see the people who are elected to the local boards who show up and say, it's not just him. He's not alone. There's thousands, hundreds of thousands of us. That makes a difference.
Right.
And that has not happened. And so, look, as I said, everybody who has a part in this on all sides of the equation has to be accountable. The community has to be accountable. I live in New Hallville. I didn't always live there. I think most people know that. I live downtown at Audubon Court. A really nice gated off community. But if you're going to represent people, I think you need to represent people who are not at the top end of the economic scale by being at the other place, right?
Right.
And when I moved into New Hallville, people asked me if I had lost my mind for moving into New Hallville, because they were like, that's not what people do. And I said, well, what people do is the reason why we have what we have.
Exactly.
And so again, we have to change these conversations. We do. Until we do that, we can talk about all of these plans people have had in other places, but race undergirds all of this. And then a conversation that is necessarily unreal because you won't touch race does not allow you to get to solutions.
Well, I think that, and also, I mean, in this country, you've got the conversation about immigration. Of course, we had that conversation here with the mayor making his statements about how he feels about immigration.